All right, guys, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the Living the Dream podcast. Today on the show, we are talking about not hanging out with people who are doing crappy things, and this is from Proverbs 1, verses 10 through 16. Now, what do I mean by this? First, let's get into the text. It reads, "My son, if sinners entice you, do not consent. If they say, 'Come with us,' let us lie in wait for blood. Let us ambush the innocent without reason. Let Sheol," which I think is a synonym for hell, "like Sheol, let us swallow them alive and whole, like those who go down to the pit. We shall find all precious goods. We shall fill our houses with plunder. Throw in your lot among us. We will all have one purse. My son, do not walk in the way with them. Hold back your foot from their paths, for their feet run to evil, and they make haste to shed blood." So the beginning of this, verse 10, is like, hey, here's a commandment. Don't let sinners entice you. And then it goes into like what those sinners say. It's like, hey, let's go lie in wait for blood. Let's ambush the innocent. Let's swallow them alive. Find all their precious goods. Fill our houses with plunder. We'll all have one purse. We'll all share it. And the initial question that has to come to your mind is, if these people are telling me to do this, why do I know they're not gonna turn back on me and screw me over? Basically, that's the just first question that pops up in my head. It's like, we're all gonna have one purse, but we're stealing money from innocent people. What's to stop you from stealing money from guilty people? Huh? Interesting. Now, that so basically, when I read this verse, I'm like, don't hang out with stupid people. Don't hang out with people who are doing crappy things. And those people aren't necessarily inherently stupid, but their actions are reflecting that of a fool right now. And you just don't need to be associated with that, especially if you're not on a strong foundation. I think there are scenarios where you can enter into a situation where somebody would typically drag you down, but you should only do it in numbers. So I think it should be like, you shouldn't go into a community where there's 10 really crappy people doing crappy things and you're the only person who has like a solid foundation of going where you want to go, because they'll pull you down. You should go with 10 people who are all very vision minded, who are all purpose driven and have a strong foundation, and maybe start a community with one or two people who are kind of astray, who are kind of reckless, who have malintent towards people. And I think those 10 will start to change those two. But I would say the people who have the majority always tend to control the narrative. So when I read this verse, it's like, hey, don't get into community with people that are doing crappy things. And now, where has this shown up in my life? I would say I avoid reckless or silly activities. I'm not great at avoiding the people, but I do avoid being in activities that could suck. And so, for example, I used to walk to middle school, and before school, some kids would go smoke weed, which was like, I basically told myself I wasn't going to do drugs or drink alcohol because I saw what it did to people and I was trying to be successful. I made that commitment to myself at a very young age. Which, before middle school, because clearly I was saying no in middle school. So we'd walk to school and be like, hey, you want to come with? I'm like, nah, I don't do that. Like, at all. Like, not even a thought crossed my mind of like, let's do this, because I just knew it was unacceptable. I decided beforehand, which is a good tip. If you are having trouble with temptation in the moment, decide before the moment and then avoid that moment altogether. And I think James Clear says this, but people who practice self-control and who do it basically in an awesome way, they take the time to not put themselves in positions where they have to practice self-control. Pretty cool stuff. So that's where it's shown up in my life. I avoid the reckless or silly activities. Now, I have trouble avoiding the people because my heart breaks for them. And because my heart breaks for them and I naturally want to fix everything in the world, I would say it's one of my biggest strengths, but also my biggest flaws. Um, it was hard for me to just cut them off, right? And it was also hard for me to build a strong foundation, build a strong community, and then go to them and help them. Mostly because that requires an extreme amount of patience, an extreme amount of resources, and an extreme amount of emotional well-being with a solid foundation. Because helping somebody who is hurting is really hard if you're also hurting. Like, it's almost impossible. And you can be hurting and you can have systems in place, you can have resources in place. Like, highly doubt people ever get to the point where they are completely perfectly healed and they are not hurting at all, but you can be in a better position versus not being in a better position. And I can tell you at 14, 16, 18, even now, I'm not in the best position to help people how I envision myself helping them. So all you can do is the most with what you have based on where you're at, and then maximize that, and it'll compound, and the compounding will blow your mind. But I've not been great at avoiding those people because my heart has always broken for them. Now, I would say the goal isn't to avoid them, it's to make yourself whole. So avoid them while you're making yourself whole, and then go back and help them and guide them and salt their oats. If you watch the rest of my podcast, some of the interviews, go ahead and salt those people's oats, get them to want the water, the eternal water. If you're Christian, if you're not Christian, just like give them a taste of success, and then make them want it and make them long for it, or like ask them questions that highlight the things that you know they hate about themselves, and be like, hey, we can help you change that. Like, that's also salting their oats, either really painting the vision for what their life could be, or making it really clear what their life is and why that sucks for them and why it can be different. It's honestly kind of a lot like the sales process. It is the sales process, and the product you're selling is themselves. You are selling them on them. So that is where it has shown up in my life, avoiding the activities, but not avoiding the people, because my heart breaks for them. My parents would also tell me about guilt by association growing up, and that's another way it showed up in my life. And I will also say now, moving forward, 23, really trying to grow my wealth, really trying to impact people, I am always seeking to surround myself with like-minded people. That's the goal of this podcast. Bring people on who are also going after their dreams and goals. I have a goal in 2023 to get into a real estate mastermind, real estate syndication mastermind, that will put me with people who are doing like 10 to 100 deals a year, I think. Like, I was gonna say tens of deals, but it sounds weird. So I think they do like 100 plus deals a year as a group, and those syndications are each like 30 to 50 million probably. I can't imagine them being lower than $20 million deals. And so if I get in a group like that, my wealth will build. I will understand the game a bit more, and when I understand the game a bit more, I can impact people more. And so that's where it has shown up in my life. Where do I want it to show up in my life? I want to always be seeking out masterminds and communities for every area of life that I want to grow in. So whether that be finances, whether that be real estate, marketing, sales, raising the standard of living to middle-class America across the world, leadership, compassion, relationships, family relationships, like whatever it may be, fitness, dieting, like all of these things, these are all areas that I want to improve in. I want to seek out communities, seek out help, seek out masterminds in these areas, because with this verse, it's telling you to not hang around fools, right? It's saying, hey, if sinners entice you, do not consent. Like, do not go with them. And those are the people who are lying in wait for blood, ambushing the innocent. They're plundering, like Sheol. So they're comparing themselves to really negative things like hell, like people who burn eternally. They're comparing themselves to that. It's like, hey, let's act like that and swallow people alive. If it's telling you to avoid people like that, it implies, now I'm not adding to the text here, I'm just saying what I take from it. If you don't want to hang around crappy people, hang around awesome people. And so that's kind of why I want this to show up in my life in the form of masterminds and communities. I also want it to show up in just me surrendering the need to help everybody. Because as much as I can help everybody and I can be a part of the process of helping everybody, it is not my job. And I really need to get that in my heart, because part of me feels a moral obligation to help people, which I think is a great thing. You should feel a moral obligation to help people, but you should not feel the pain of not fulfilling that obligation when you've done all you can and they don't want help at that moment, because you can't make the choice for people ever. You can influence them, you can salt their oats, you can set up the environment, you can show them all the opportunity in the world, but when it comes down to it, people just need to become the person they need to become, and they may not be ready for you to be in their life. So we've talked about what this is, we've talked about where it's shown up in my life, where do I want it to show up in my life, in masterminds and communities. How can you apply it to your life? If you've heard that saying, you are the 5 people that you hang around the most, or whatever it may be. I think it's true. And I think this verse kind of shows that it's true, because it's telling you not to hang out with crappy people, because you'll probably become like crappy people. I guess it doesn't say that you will, it doesn't really say that you will become like them yet. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't explicitly say that you will become like them, but in my opinion, if you hang around crappy people, you'll probably become a little crappier. So that's not from the text. That is from my opinion. And so I think you can apply this text to your life by cutting out toxic people. And that is from the text, because it says, do not consent to the enticement of sinners. And by sinners, it just means people who are not in step with the Spirit, who are not walking like based on God's will for their life. And so if they have malintent towards people, or they're doing selfish things, living from the body, and guess what? That can be Christians. Christians are sinners too. So if you have some Christian friends and they're enticing you to sin, ditch them. And you may not have to permanently ditch them, but ditch them for that moment. And that's where it's it's a hard dynamic between really ditching people and then ditching the activity. And that's why I've always ditched the activities, because I've always believed in the people. But if it becomes a pattern and they're consistently trying to drag you into something that is not good for who you are or where you're going, cut them. Just cut them. I know it's harsh, but there are other people in the world who will love them. You can send them Christmas cards, but they do not need to be a part of your daily life. So cut out the toxic people from your life by minimizing time spent and activities shared with them. Again, you can send them Christmas cards, Thanksgiving cards, see your family at Thanksgiving, whatever it may be, but do not interact with them on a regular basis such that it influences your thoughts, feelings, actions, and results, right? Then turn around and kind of do the implied opposite of this verse, and instead of doing what sinners entice you to do, do what the righteous entice you to do. So figure out kind of what your life is going to be about. If you're Christian, the Bible's a great place to start. If you're not Christian and you aspire to another religion, another holy book is a great place to start. If you don't aspire to any religion, start with self-improvement books, start with philosophy books, and understand what your life is going to be about, or start just thinking inwardly about what your life is going to be about. And once you've done that, turn around and really just get around people who reflect those things and impact people in a way that is compatible with the new thoughts, the new actions, the new beliefs that you have. So A, cut toxic people. B, get clear on what you want your life to look like. And then C, get around people who are thriving when it comes to that lifestyle. And maybe if you don't know where to start, think about where you want your health to look like, what you want your health to look like, what you want your wealth to look like, and what you want your relationships to look like, and then go from there. All right, guys, that is all we got from you. Proverbs it gets me talking, man. It has some great wisdom in there. Thank you guys for watching. As always, we will see you on the next one. And on that note, we're out.